Dude, that helium planet was so cool. Did you know about gas planets before today?
Yeah, I think I read about them somewhere. Helium's cool. I'm gonna go heat up some burritos. You want one?
You know it. I'm setting a course for gas planet Rigbutt. Dude, that helium planet was so cool. Did you know about gas planets before today?
Yeah, I think I read about them somewhere. Helium's cool. I'm gonna go heat up some burritos. You want one?
You know it. I'm setting a course for gas planet. Whoa. I'm getting the craziest deja vu right.
Dude, that helium planet was so cool. Did you know about gas planets before today?
Wait, we just did this. Something's weird.
Dude, that helium planet...
Okay, did anyone do anything wrong or weird lately?
Heavens, no!
Okay. Has anyone taken anything from outside the dome that maybe they shouldn't have taken? Maybe something from another planet?
No!
Oh, wait. What is going on?
It's Rigby's orb! It's resetting time and it won't stop until we destroy it!
Destroy it!
No!
Welcome to an all-new episode of the Chronic Rift Facebook Live podcast. It's your old pal, Jonas Drew here, February 6th, 2018. Can you believe it? 6 episodes in. And I almost thought this one wasn't going to happen because we had a major malfunction with the streaming part of our service here. As you can see on our screen, I've got 2 guests with me this week. Let me introduce you to them both. One is a longtime contributor here to the Chronic Rift. He did a little 6-part series a while back on The Thing, both the movies and the books. He's been on our Cyborgs podcast. He's been on my Batcave podcast. Mr. Clay Duggar, the Cowboy podcaster himself. I just mangled your intro. Wonderful man. This is the problem with live.
The podcast Cowboy.
The podcast Cowboy. That's why.
Whose podcasts have died of attrition.
Whose podcasts are what?
Have died of attrition.
Oh. Well, this...
Unfortunately, I just burned myself out. I did so much, so fast, and I just got up one day and almost just threw it all away. I was so burnt out.
Well,
now I just do little special things.
Right.
And this is one of them.
Well, we almost died of attrition here, too. I mean, I said I either got to, or get off the pot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like your cup.
Oh, thank you, yes. The mug this week is my emerald mug. Bam, bam.
Oh God.
I wish I had a little bam in it though right now, but the last time I podcasted with a little bam in my cup, that didn't go over very well. So.
Yeah, but it might be more entertaining.
I would think so, but
for us.
my co-hosts didn't think so at the time. Yeah. And also, on the left-hand side of the screen there, from the weekly Podioplex... All right, you know what? Introduce yourself. I can't talk anymore. I'm done.
Okay. And welcome back to the weekly Podioplex. I'm Denise with your quick flicks.
I can't talk
There,
anymore.
now you have a face.
Oh, my God. What is wrong with me today?
Not enough
No,
Bam in your cup.
Maybe. Well, it's funny because I was saying that we don't have time today because we're doing a whole length episode here talking about a particular topic. But sometimes on the episodes, I ask my guests to bring something in that they want to share with everybody. And one of these weeks, I got to bring in the honey mead that I picked up at a farmer's market because, damn, that's got a lot of Bam if you put that in your tea or cider. Oh, so. We're here today to talk about time loops because it is the 25th anniversary, actually coming up in about a week's time, of the movie Groundhog's Day. Now, if you haven't seen Groundhog's Day, here is the trailer just to catch you up to speed.
It's Groundhog Day!
Groundhog time.
1,000 people freezing their butts off waiting to worship a rat.
Weatherman Phil Connors is spending the day in Puxatawney, Pennsylvania.
Phil? Ned Ryerson. I did the whistling belly button trick at the high school talent show.
Bing!
Bang!
But Phil's about to find out he's not just stuck in Puxatawney.
Will you be checking out today, Mr. Connors?
Chance of departure today, 100%.
He's stuck
It's Groundhog Day!
in Groundhog Day.
I'm reliving the same day over and over.
Phil?
Ned Ryerson?
Bang!
Do you ever have deja vu, Mrs. Lancaster?
I don't think so, but I could check with the kitchen.
Well, it's Groundhog Day. Again?
At first, he was a little anxious.
Phil? What?
Will you be checking out today, Mr. Connors?
I'd say the chance of departure is 80%.
But now,
We could do whatever we want.
he's discovering the possibilities
Don't you worry about cholesterol?
Why?
and living life like there's no tomorrow.
Phil Connors!
Ned!
Because there isn't.
I am an immortal. I have been stabbed, shot, burned, frozen, electrocuted. I'm a god.
You're God.
I'm a god. I'm not the god.
He's out of his gourd.
But to get what his heart wants most
What are you looking for, Phil? A date for the weekend?
means living this day over again till he gets it right.
Believe it or not, I studied 19th century French poetry.
What a waste of time.
I studied 19th century French poetry.
La fille qui j'aimerais.
You speak French.
Oui.
Bill Murray, Andy McDowell,
To the groundhog.
I always drink to world peace. Well, what should we drink to?
I like to say a prayer and drink to world peace. Don't drive angry. Don't drive angry.
He might be okay.
Yes! Groundhog Day!
life has a funny way of repeating itself.
What did you do today?
Oh, same old, same old.
One. All right. While this was playing, Denise just said the most mind-blowing thing. I'm sorry, I got to throw that out there. As I was going to have one first, but really, you're not that into Groundhog Day?
I'm not. Never have been. Ever since I was a kid and I first saw it, it was Bill Murray being Bill Murray. I prefer Bill Murray in Stripes or in Ghostbusters than Bill Murray in Groundhog Day. He was an ass. I never liked that movie.
He was an ass in Ghostbusters.
Yeah, I know, but he was more of an ass that you could tolerate in Ghostbusters rather than Groundhog Day. Groundhog Day, you just wanted to punch him in the face.
It's called character development because by the end of the movie, he wasn't that way.
No, he's still an ass in the end of the movie. You guys just don't notice it. The rest of us do.
See, because I have to say, by full disclosure, this was the first movie I ever saw with my now wife. That was our first date. Was Groundhog Day.
Oh, cool.
That's so sweet.
So actually, we're also celebrating 25 years together this month.
Aw, yay.
Yeah. And that was kind of when I saw that on the list of anniversaries. I was like, oh, we gotta talk. I mean, it's an excuse for me to talk about my wife for a moment. No, no. Look, when it comes to time loops, I mean, Clay, you mentioned it before we started the show, and I'm the same way. I'm a sucker for a time travel story, even if it's a bad one. I'll still watch it, and there's plenty of bad ones out there. But
There's a lot of bad ones out
There's
there.
a lot of bad ones. But for some reason, the whole aspect of the time loop, the being stuck and forever just trapped, when it's done well, seems to capture our attention. Hey, Clay, I'll start with you. Why?
I think, I don't know, for me personally, I think there's always the desire to have a do-over, to have a respawn. Mm-hmm. That's why the one of the things on Facebook is maybe a deja vu is a respawn. You screwed up the first time through and you're getting another chance. And it's not that I have a lot of regrets. It's just that, maybe I should have taken the blue pill, I think for me, that's what it is. It's a chance to, also at Groundhog Day is I'm sorry you don't like it, but it's kind of the example of all the stuff you never got to learn, all the stuff you never got to learn in your life, he got to learn. He got to learn to play piano. He got to learn to be a sculptor. He got to learn to do this and that and the other thing. And now that I'm in my 50s, I think it's much more important for me to pine about what I didn't do. And it's a do-over to do things different and a chance to learn something new for the most part. Now I know that not all the movies have that element, because most of them don't have in the book. I think Groundhog Day, I think it was like 40 years worth of loops.
Right.
But so that Groundhog Day for me is not my favorite, but one of, because it's not a sci-fi time loop. It's almost like a real life time loop, because there's no sci-fi elements. There's no, other than the time loop itself, but there's no reason. There's no aliens. There's no nothing. It's just this guy gets to do it until he does it right. And if he makes a mistake, he gets to do it again. We don't get that ever, hardly ever in life. If I walk out in front of if I don't look both ways before crossing the street, well, too bad.
Right.
But then, then you go into a good sci-fi movie like Predestination, and Predestination is, my God, it's like 9 time loops or something in it, and they're all crossing each other's paths. And quite honestly, there's one character in the whole damn movie. And I think there's actually a character in the movie that's not in the story, and it's the same character. That's so I don't know. It's a chance to do stuff right or different, if not right.
Now, what about you, Denise?
So for me, time loops, I think the thing that's the most fun about the time loops is the what if question. What if you could go back and do it again? What if you, like the parallel universe theory, what if you made a different decision? How would that affect the time, the timeline? And then, of course, what would happen if you went back and killed Hitler? Well, according to the doctor, that's a fixed point in time. Sorry, you can't change it. So I think stuff like that, where, especially when it comes to the doctor, where we can make rules on the time loop. Sure, you can be stuck in the time loop. And the one thing that could get you out of the time loop is the thing that you couldn't do. So then it forces you to think creatively. How else am I going to get out of this time loop? And I mean, you've had time loops that have done really, really well, and then time loops that have done really, really badly. And then I've read books where time loops are just compounding on each other and compounding, and it takes that what if and it expands on it, and it's just like, so the rest of the world is screwed. How are you today? So for me, it's the asking the question. But I like that in my science fiction, where I don't like things force fed to you. That's why I like Blade Runner and Blade Runner 2049 so much. And then, Altered Carbon. I love Altered Carbon because it asks you these questions. And I think if a time loop is done well, it should do the same thing.
That was always something that annoyed me really quick about Doctor Who, is this whole thing of fixed points in time. How is it certain things are fixed points, but other things aren't fixed points? Would you think everything is a fixed point in time to a certain extent?
I mean, I would think everything could be a fixed point in time, but I mean, you have, like, for me, the fixed point. It's like my podcast all over again.
It's contagious.
See,
I know. It's a good thing I don't have Audacity. Then I could just edit it out. Anyway, so for me, the fixed point in time would be like World War I is a fixed point in time. Doesn't matter how we got there. It's just we got there. So here's World War I. But not necessarily that fixed point in time doesn't necessarily have to be, it happens in this way. World War I happens in this way. World War I can happen, but it can happen for other, reasons different than just Franz Ferdinand getting assassinated. It could be that, he wasn't assassinated, something else triggered World War I. But that it happened is a fixed point in time. Something has to happen to trigger World War I. So for me, that was Doctor Who. That was the fun of Doctor Who. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure, fixed point in time can't change it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that what we think as the reality of World War I actually happened. Maybe it was a rewrite in time.
Right.
Who knows?
Now, see, that would be the interesting thing, though, is that what if, take that fixed point in time concept, and you put that in a time loop. And we're always saying that one of the key things of a time loop with a lot of these stories seems to be to sort of change what's, change it so that you can move on. With Doctor Who, they did that with there was the Dalek story. No, it wasn't Dalek, it was the Meglos story, where basically they realized they had to do the same thing at the same time that the loop was actually occurring, and it caused a feedback. So, you have to do some sort of a change. But, what if the time loop occurred in a fixed point, and you had to change the fixed point in order to get free? Do you do it, or do you stay stuck in a time loop?
Right. Those are the questions.
I don't know.
I just got deep on you, didn't I?
Well,
you did. Here was the surface of the pool, and you went down.
if it's fixed, the question then is, can you change it? It's not should you change it, but if it's actually fixed, would you be able to change it?
Right.
If it's fixed, you shouldn't be able. Something should always stop you from changing it.
Yeah. But again, you can't change it, but I mean, that's not saying you can't rewrite it. That's not saying you can't, is something that we know or has said to have happened to create this fixed point in time didn't actually happen. Maybe it was something else. So yeah.
I think we've got a story here.
Brains out,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's like Inglourious Bastards. Inglourious Bastards was great because it was like Hitler got killed in the theater, but that's the fixed point in time is World War II. So maybe they just came up with this whole suicide thing. There's a bunch of different things you can do.
Moved to Brazil. He moved to Brazil and lived the rest of his life.
Oh, is that what happened? He's down with Elvis, huh?
And Tupac.
Oh.
There it is. So yeah, I think that for me again was the most fun of Doctor Who. That fixed point in time is but what if though?
I think that's something though that we can all take. Well, not we all take, but I think that, and Clay hit on it there when it came to Groundhog's Day. When it comes to a time loop, there is, whether you liked Bill Murray when he came out of it in the end, he still learned something. Now, maybe he's the kind of guy, that character, that you, no matter what, you were never going to spend time with him or hang out with him compared to, say, Ghostbusters and such. But the time loop gives us that opportunity, and maybe that's part of why we're fascinated with the time loops, is it gives the character an opportunity to realize his or her mistakes by going through the process over and over again. One of the stories I've actually come up with, and I always keep meaning to sit down and just write it because it would make a great time loop story, is a time loop set in a school. The kids,
that'd be fun.
The kids come in for the day of class, they get in, the bell rings, they go through the day, it's the end of the day, the bell rings, they walk out the door, and as the bell is ringing, the time loop hits, and they're coming back in. And they just go through this loop until they realize something's wrong and they got to get out of there.
Oh, wow. That would be fun, actually. That would be a fun story. I'd read that.
Yeah, if you can write that many different characters well, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
They did it with Battle Royale. That was a great book. Oh, that was a great book.
Yeah. Now, in terms of time loop stories, okay, there are plenty of people who write good ones, and like I said, there are plenty of people who write bad ones. In particular, I mean, I can't think of any books where time loops are treated badly, because usually, if you're going to make that the focus of your book, you got to be careful. But I sometimes feel that Hollywood, movies, TV, like I said, I mentioned before the show started, Star Trek, sometimes they got it right, like yesterday's Enterprise. or not Yesterday's Enterprise, Cause and Effect, and then other times they get it wrong, and I can't. There's like a Voyager episode where they're stuck in a time loop that just seemed to be, well, we got to do a time loop story, you know. Clay, but you had sent me a list of, and I didn't get a chance to look at some of the material you sent me. But for you, what stands out as a good time loop story in television or movies?
Well, in movies, I have to go just start with my favorite, and it's the movie adaptation of the short story "All You Zombies," and the movie is Predestination. I think the story is a little better, but personally not significantly better, because the movie hits all the high points of the story, and hits them pretty well. And I believe it actually adds in a character. Spoilers, by the way.
Yeah.
There's one character, and he is everybody in the story except his boss. Okay. The only person he's not is his boss. He is himself. He is his own mother. He is his own father, and he is his own enemy in the movie. He's the bad guy he's chasing as a cop. And that movie will absolutely bake your brain if you don't know what's coming. My wife is not a sci-fi fan or anything, and she watched it with me. And so at the end of it, I asked her, I said, well, what do you think? And she goes, so basically he was every character in the movie, right? It's a loop and a loop and a loop and a loop and a loop. It's not one person doing the same thing over and over and over. It's a whole bunch of different loops in one story, because he works for a time travel agency, a governmental agency. So he goes back in time on purpose, but it's the things that happen to him when he goes back in time that make it so fascinating to me. And you can get into the ethics of gender changing and having baby, and I don't even care. I want a good movie.
Right.
And so that's what I did. And the story, the short story or novella, whatever it is, the surprise at the end, the twist at the end is the reveal is much more dramatic. Of course, I knew the story going into Predestination, so maybe I just missed it there. There's a lot of, we can talk about Groundhog Day. I like that one. Believe it or not, in 1964, they made a movie called The Time Travelers that for 1964 was an excellent sci-fi movie. They didn't have most of the silly stuff we're used to from the early 60s and the 50s. Mm-hmm. They had a little bit, but, they had a woman scientist who for some reason didn't know what a photon was. And so they had to have another woman scientist explain it to her.
Well, at least it was a woman.
But that was also exposition for the people watching it, because the people watching it may not have known what a photon was.
Oh, there you go.
They should have had a non-scientist ask the question. That's really the only silly point of the whole story.
Right.
And the first time you watch it, you don't know it's a time loop story until the very end. And then you remember what happened in the very beginning that indicated it was a time loop.
Right.
And then it actually leaves you wondering, did they ever really get out of it? Or did the time loop just keep going for eternity? And they kind of implied that that's what happened, that they never really got out of it. I think they did, but that's just personally. Those are three good ones. There's on Netflix. There's a movie called Paradox. They did it well. They can only go back a few minutes or an hour in time, and I don't know if that's a restriction or if that's just what happened in the story. But they didn't have all their normal "you can't meet yourself" rules.
Right.
And I mean, they interacted with themselves and everything, and it is one of the best. And it was never. I don't think it was ever released in theaters or anything. And wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable there in theaters. So if you have Netflix, look up Paradox.
Okay. That
one's good, and it's a little gruesome, and it's not a happy movie.
Right.
But it's a good sci-fi, and the science is not the important part. So you don't have to worry about, well, did they get this right? Did they get this wrong? It just happens, and it works. Then we have a bad one called Arc, also on Netflix. ARQ.
ARQ. Okay.
ARQ, and it's kind of like the silence in Doctor Who. The moments it's over, you've forgotten all about it. It's just it's good about the first half, and then it just goes to crap. I mean, it's I don't even remember. I was going to rewatch it for this, and then when I watched the trailer to remind myself what the movie was, I remembered I really didn't like it enough to rewatch it even for this.
Right.
You can watch it. It's entertaining to a point, but it didn't make a whole lot of sense by the end of it. It's almost like they had this story and they just threw time travel in just to make it interesting. Again, it's like I said, we have to have a time travel thing.
Yeah. Well, that's
all right.
Denise, sorry.
Sorry, gentlemen. I have to cut out early. I've got a D&D game, so I'm so sorry.
That's why Denise was looking away, folks. I understand. We're going to tease her now.
I know, it's going to be horrible, right?
It's going to be brutal.
So next time, however, I will be here for the next one, okay? I am so sorry. I want to keep talking because I do have a lot of time loop stuff that I want to talk about, but unfortunately, D&D.
D&D.
And it would be...
Well, if we're lucky, we'll just replay this part over and over and over.
There we go. Yes, we can. All right, guys. And again, I'm so sorry. The timing is just incredibly off, and that is my own fault because I thought the dates were different, and I feel like such a bad person. I am so sorry. Please forgive me.
That's all right, Denise.
Not a problem.
All right.
Life happens when you're busy making other plans.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, and for all intents and purposes, if you want a good time loop book that will make you throw the fourth one against the wall because it ends like The Sopranos did and you have to wait until the fifth one, get the books. Get Spring Heel Jack, The Adventures of Spring Heel Jack. It's the first book in the series. It's by Mark Hodder, and it's the Burton and Swinburne steampunk adventures. It's a lot of fun. It's what got me into steampunk in the first place. So it's great. It's a time loop story. And it explodes into just amazingness. They go into the future. They go into the distant future. It's like the time machine meets everything else you can possibly imagine. But anyway, gentlemen, thank you for having me on. I will see you next time.
All right.
On the Weekly Podioplex.
Take care, Denise. Thanks for coming.
Bye.
Bye.
Of course,
she's not gone.
She's not gone. You gotta hit the right there.
There
she
she
goes. Okay.
Okay.
So now it's just you and me.
All right. Have fun storming the castle.
Here's the thing, Clay. You realize she's on a podcast on a Sunday morning, and I'm not faulting her. I'm like, she got, and she's saying, I'm leaving to go play Dungeons and Dragons. There are now thousands of men and women around the world going, oh my God, that's hot.
What killed me is something else. Something to talk about scheduling. Something else came up for this morning that I was going to have to cancel because we were starting at 9:00. Well, that was 9:00 my time.
Oh, okay.
And so my wife made other plans because we weren't going to be able to do this other thing.
Right.
And then we find out we're starting at 8:00, and now we have time to do the other thing, and she's got other plans, so I still have to cancel the other thing. We're in our own little sadistic time loop.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I love a good time travel story, and a time loop story, like I said, they can be good, they can get bad. And I kind of rattled off that list really quickly, but excuse me. I was really surprised with the Time Travelers in 1964. They did a really good job. I think they didn't have enough story to make a movie because they had a couple of sequences that just went on and on. But that's movie, it's filmmaking. That's not story related.
Right.
But it was, if you get a chance to look it up, the Time Travelers 1964, you're probably going to only see it on MeTV or one of those kind of channels.
Right.
Because I couldn't find it even to purchase. Amazon doesn't even have it listed on anything. And you can find it's on IMDb. You can read about it, but I couldn't find anywhere to access that movie at will.
Yeah.
And so, but that's one of the better ones, and for its time, it's before my time. It's before I was even around. I mean, I'm a child of the '60s, but just not the early '60s. And I don't know why people just can't do better If they can do better when they were making silly sci-fi movies, I don't know why they can't do better now.
Well, here's the thing, and this is something I just was thinking about here, because we're talking about movies. I brought up Star Trek, Babylon 5. We mentioned off air, did a time loop story. How is it that, though, when it comes to, with the exception of Doctor Who, entities that do time travel, that's their main goal? The Time Tunnel, Quantum Leap, Voyagers, Journeyman. None of them ever did anything involving actual time loops. They are all grounded in science fiction. You would think they would have taken on an episode dealing with time looping. And with the exception of Quantum Leap, which I can't say 100% for certain they didn't, I know the other three didn't.
Well, Doctor Who did and didn't. There's one episode. It's a Capaldi episode. It's one of the last ones in his second season.
Right.
It's not an actual time loop, but he's reliving the same period of time over and over and over. Not by going back in time, but by being recreated every time. He dies and he comes back because the transport device regenerates him, and he relives those 2 or 3 days or whatever it was. And then he dies, bringing himself back, and he does this for over 4 billion years.
Right.
So that's technically I see that as a time loop. And he was manipulating it by doing the same, because he knew he would figure it all out the same way every time. And so at the end, that's when he was going through that wall of diamond. That's why he did that. So it's not a time loop story, because he was progressing linearly through time. Like, linearly, is that a word? He was progressing through linear time like normal, but he was doing it by repeating the same few days or a week or however long it was. Mm-hmm. So they kind of did a time loop in Doctor Who, at least in that manner.
Right. Well, no. Well, there's actually, going back to the Tom Baker days, they did do an exact time loop in Meglos, and like I said, the way to get out of it was to basically repeat everything simultaneously, or like be off like a second or two, like do the actions just before the actions were supposed to occur, and then that supposedly broke the time loop. Go figure. Yeah. So then it was a matter of timing.
Well, Doctor Who's not known for its science accuracy.
No.
So,
no.
But what kind of accuracy can we have? We don't do time loops that we know of, so how can we be accurate on the science?
Well, that's the other thing, too, yeah. I mean, like, for instance, okay, now, I know you haven't watched it yet, and we're actually going to spend an episode next week talking about the whole series, the first season of Star Trek Discovery. Now, when that show came out, they were all about, like, a lot of the fans were upset about the fact they were doing the mirror universe. There were mentions so quickly of Enterprise and other things like that, Christopher Pike and stuff. They brought in Sarek, because it was like Star Trek fans wanted new stuff. For me, none of that bothered me until I saw they were doing an episode with a time loop. And to me, Star Trek has never really, with the exception of Cause and Effect, has never really done time travel well. I wasn't even a big fan of the original series time travel episodes. I like The Voyage Home, the fourth movie, for what it is in terms of the humor and stuff, but I didn't think it was that great a story to begin with. And then along comes this thing, and it's a great... They do the whole thing, it's time looping, it's got Harry Mudd in it, he's part of the reason why this whole time loop is happening. But then you mentioned science, and we don't have actual science terminology and such, other than what people are hypothesizing at the moment when it comes to time travel and such. But it all falls apart because of one thing that sounds more like it's from the cartoon Star Trek than it is from an actual live-action series. Time crystals. We're in a time loop because of a time crystal. And I just, as soon as they said that, I was like, oh my god, this is like right out of a cartoon episode.
Yeah, how would you even find a time crystal?
Harry Mudd managed to somehow.
Well, Harry Mudd is one of the more spectacular characters in the Star Trek universe.
He is.
He is Teflon, man. He can do anything and get away with it.
Yeah.
So, except the robots of his wife, he couldn't get away from them.
And he's played excellently. When you do finally get to watch the series, Clay, I know a lot of people weren't impressed with Rainn Wilson from The Office playing Mud. I thought he was perfect casting.
Oh man, he'd be awesome. I don't even have to see it to know he'd be awesome.
He was fantastic. I thought he did a fantastic job in the role. But, as far as the time loops, to me, it's funny. Like I said, what was actually a good story overall had a lot of drama, had a lot of tension. Rainn Wilson back as Harry Mudd, because this was his second episode. It's all led up when he holds up and he says, we're in this time loop because of a time crystal. And we're talking about a concept that there is no real, scientific background to anyway. We have to be open. But it's funny how, we're open to it if certain conditions apply.
You say time crystal, and there is something that I saw on Facebook the other day where they've actually found something that they've called a time crystal.
Really?
I actually, you said that, and it's been ticking in my... Yeah, you look at, in the University of California, Berkeley News, scientists unveil new form of matter, time crystal. When you said those words, it was bouncing around this empty head of mine. Now, it's probably not an actual physical crystal like you're thinking, like they would show in Star Trek.
Right.
But, yeah, if you go to January 26, 2017, news.berkeley.edu, just do a Google search for time crystals. So time crystal is an actual term, supposedly. I'm not a scientist, and it's on the internet, so it has to be true. But yeah, do a Google search for time crystal, and you'll see the UC Berkeley news article about it.
Yeah.
So they actually have time crystals. I just don't understand any of it. So I read the article when I first saw it on Facebook, and I have no memory whatsoever what it says. My brain doesn't stick to that kind of data.
Right. I'm always telling my kids at school, because they're like, you're supposed to be a teacher, they'll say, sometimes joking. And I'm like, what, you saw that on the website for the school? I said, you never believe everything you hear on the internet.
Yeah. So time crystals is an actual subject, I'll put it that way. And maybe not an actual item, but it's an actual subject. So that may be where they got the idea for the time crystal for the episode.
Right. Have you ever read the book The Man Who Folded Himself?
No.
It's by David Gerald. It's been ages since I've read the book, but it's one I highly recommend. And while the main thrust of the book is not about time loops, it's about alternate universes. I can't. Oh my God! It's happening again. I'm having a relapse.
Yeah, you're also scared. Your Skype is also jumpy. So.
Oh, is it really?
I can't tell if it's you or if it's Skype.
It might be both. But in the book, the character does manage to, through his alternate, by traveling through the parallel planes and meeting different versions of himself, which he was warned not to do, because he gets this belt that allows him to jump. He also gets to, because of the way, and I think this is what Sliders picked up on, was, did you ever watch the TV show Sliders?
Yeah, first couple of seasons.
Okay.
Then it kind of, actually I watched until they killed off
Arturo?
Cue Ball, what's his name? The main character.
Quinn.
Quinn, yeah. And brought him back, merged him, but it was like, really, guys? and then the last season just sucked.
Yeah.
Because the last season was horrible. But yeah, I'm familiar with a lot of it. Yes.
Well, because in it, there were a couple of episodes of Sliders where they would go to, because the premise was they were going to parallel universes. But in some of them, when they go back to a certain parallel universe, that universe wasn't on the same time track as the others, so there were times where Quinn would go back and meet his mother at a younger age and stuff like that. So the same thing happens here with David Gerald's The Man Who Folded Himself. So because of it, it's kind of like a time loop, because he's getting a chance in some situations to relive certain events again. Unfortunately, the problem is that he's messing those up, and messing up things with his counterparts in each of the universes. And then it gets really weird when he meets a female version of himself and falls in love with her. After having affairs with male versions of himself because he realizes, like, who do you love the most but yourself?
Oh, God. I'd hate myself. I would hate myself. My wife's best friend, the running joke around the house is that we're twins separated from birth, even though she's a couple years older. We have all the same mannerisms, half the same ideas. We'll be, all three of us would go to dinner and I'll sit like this and she'll sit like this at the same time. We reach for chips and we'll grab the same chip. I mean, it's just, and I want to tell you what, she's my wife's best friend, but we've agreed if it was just her and I, we'd kill each other. I may love myself, but no, I couldn't live with myself. No.
Clay, what if she is from an alternate universe and she's the female version of you? She hasn't told you yet.
She's smarter than I am, so she could be anything. She's a lot smart. She's an educator like you, but I like to think I'm smart. Oh my God, she walks in the house and I lose IQ points because she just sucks them from everybody and absorbs them. Actually, she's great. She's really great to my wife. I make a lot of fun of her, but she's been a boon to my wife. So I love her dearly. But oh my God, we'd kill each other. Yeah, you leave us in a room 10 minutes and we're not talking.
Right. But now I don't know if we actually got to an answer there because Denise also had to leave. But why is it that these shows like Quantum Leap and stuff never really tackled? You would think it's like inherent. It's like we're a travel show. Because it's like anything else. Quantum Leap's their premise was he could only go within his timeline, but eventually he figured out a way to sort of
then they broke that
to break that. Time Tunnel's premise was that they were out of control, bouncing around through time, and yet there were moments when they could pull them back when the story allowed for it, and then of course they'd have to send them off again.
Well,
why couldn't
Sliders got home? Sliders got home in the last episode of season, was it 3? Where they got home, they were only going to be there for 45 seconds.
Right.
They picked up a newspaper and the Mets won the pennant or whatever. Whoever won the World Series that year, and It was really the team that won the World Series that year. And they said, "Oh no, that could never happen." And they were standing in front of Quinn's house, and they left. And his mother came out and went, "Quinn," it was like, oh, really, you just ruined the whole show.
Yeah.
Their whole point is trying to get home, and they were home and they left.
Yeah.
And so it's like, come on, people, don't make it stupid. and just, I don't know what your question was, but I interrupted.
Well, no, it's just again, why is it, do you think, that the ones that specialize in time travel never touch the time loop concept? Because it's just such a gimme. That was it. I got distracted by talking about Discovery and their episode. That's why we never got to the actually answering the question. Why is it that the actual shows that specialize in time travel, and you were talking about Doctor Who, why is it though the other ones, are American ones in particular, let's put it that way, American ones, because there have been other British TV shows. There was one called Crime Traveler about a cop who could go back in time and try and solve old cases and stuff. And I think they did a time loop episode. Life on Mars, I believe, did a time loop episode. But American sci-fi time travel shows never seem to touch the concept. And it would be an easy win for them.
I think for some reason the Americans have got hung up on this time cop rule that they brought in that movie, where you can't encounter yourself. And I never understood that rule. That didn't make any sense to me whatsoever.
Right.
Just on biology alone, your skin cells renew every, 7 years or something like that. So periodically, you're actually not the same person. If I met myself from 10 years ago, I could shake hands, and it's not the same. It's the same DNA, but it's not the same skin.
Right.
Because the skin has replaced itself, except for maybe the brain, and maybe even the brain does it.
Right.
Most of the whole human body inside now renews every now and then.
Right.
And Time Cop did that, where of course you melt into this weird. If you touch yourself from a different time, and that's why I was so happy when I mentioned that movie. My screen went dark. I can't remember the name of it now. Not Ark, but the other one. Okay,
the one on Netflix. I can't think of it.
Paradox. Yeah,
Paradox.
I was so happy when they didn't do that, and I think for some reason America, at least America's filmmakers, have got it in their head that if you go back in time, you can't meet yourself. And then Because Groundhog Day, that's one thing. He was in a time loop, but he never met himself. He wasn't traveling through time, because that's different than being in a time loop. Yeah, technically you're traveling back in time at the beginning of every loop, but you're not going all over the place, so you can't meet yourself. And I don't know why they don't do that. I don't. This is going to sound horrible, and if there's anybody there who writes for movies or is a filmmaker or something, don't hate me. I don't think American filmmakers are smart enough to do a good time loop story on a regular basis. We'll have a few standouts. Predestination was great, but it had great source material. Mm-hmm. Groundhog Day, it had great source material. An original one that's not written from a book, I don't think they have the brains to do it. They'd screw it up. They'd come up with some stupid time travel rule that doesn't make any sense, and it would just ruin the whole story. Now, Britain, they're not afraid of anything over there. That's why Doctor Who can be so just incredibly excellent sometimes, and it can be really bad sometimes. They're not afraid to push boundaries. Doctor Who's got it's got homosexual characters, and in America they're starting to do that now, but they're starting to make those the main characters of the story, which is fine. But Doctor Who brings them in such a manner that every time they do it, it's shocking, and I don't know why. But they're not afraid to push a boundary. In America, that for normal broadcast TV and things, they don't want boundaries,
right?
Except the ratings boundaries. They want to push a little more nudity or a little more language, but it's like taboo in soap operas. Taboo. There's no relationships between related individuals. They never do that because it's strictly taboo. I'm not encouraging that.
All right, I get you.
But as off the wall as soap operas get, they don't have any intentional cousins, brothers and sisters, parents, and anything like that. And so maybe it's just because it's taboo. Maybe there's something about it that they just. And maybe they're just not smart enough. I think they're just not.
I was going to say that may have something more to do with it. Maybe whether it's not smart enough, not grasping the concepts of time itself. I'm suddenly thinking, as you were talking about that, the movie Land of the Lost, the big screen version based on.
Oh, I didn't even watch it.
Okay, yeah. Well, see, I went and actually saw it because when I saw the pictures of the Slee Stacks, I was like, okay, they did such loving detail to recreate the Slee Stacks so well. They didn't try and cling on them the way like Discovery has changed the Klingons again. It's like, come on, just do them the way they're supposed to be. And they did, and yet they did it in a way that it worked in the movie. The problem was that the movie was dealing with the Land of the Lost being this enclosed world that when you tried to escape, you would wind up back in it, which was fine. But the terminology they were using, because they were talking about time bubbles, and I thought, you're not really getting this as far as what time is. And I think that's a big part of the problem, is that we don't understand, or when I say we, I mean Americans, don't have a concept of what time really is. I don't know if we when we write about it, when we talk about it and such. Oh, we lost Clay.
No, I had to talk to my wife.
Oh, you had to talk to your wife. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I just cut the audio and video so I could do that.
Oh,
so.
okay. All right, cool.
Sorry, I should have warned you, but I didn't want to interrupt you.
No, it was good because it was actually a perfect time while I was talking. But I think that's really what it comes down to. I think we're just not capable of understanding. I mean, there've been plenty of other time travel movies that have been done, but they're very simplistic in terms of the rules of time.
I do have to go help my wife with something, so vamp.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, because we've only got...
I mean, it's just a piece of jewelry, so...
Because we're at the point now where, like, 4 minutes away from well, not even wrapping it up, because that's when I'm rolling the credits. So I was going to say, final thoughts on time loops.
If you do it right, you'll have an excellent story. Write a story. If you want to write a story. If you're not a writer, sit down and write it anyway. Do it. Go onto your streaming service, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, whatever, and just do time travel movies. and you'll get all these gems that you never knew were there. That's how I found Paradox and Arc and all these things. If you like time travel stories, if you like time loop stories, are harder to find, but find Predestination. Find The Time Travelers from 1964. Those two are at the extreme ends of when they were doing it, when they first started doing it, and now that they're now the modern day movie making. Find those two movies. Those two are perfect examples of a time loop story.
Okay. And I will say, if you haven't watched it yet, go check out the Discovery episode. I forget the exact title, but Rainn Wilson from The Office is in it as Harry Mudd. It's a great time loop episode. And one of the better ones that Star Trek has done, which they don't do very often. Clay, really quick, because I know you said you're not podcasting as much as you used to, but if people want to get in touch with you, follow along with you, how do they go about doing that?
Jeez, I don't even. I'm assuming iTunes still has all my podcasts. I haven't even checked. Do a search for the Righteous Dudes Dudecast, and do a search for the podcast Cowboy. The Righteous Dudes Dudecast is my first foray into podcasting. It was a lot of fun, but I don't know if my heart wasn't in it or what. The podcast Cowboy was an interview podcast where I went to go to comic conventions to do table interviews with artists and actors and everybody.
Right.
And that one, I just literally burned myself out. We have so many conventions down here in South Texas. I don't monetize my podcasts. And so I don't get anything, I don't make any money. And I tell you what, I worked my butt off, and I've probably got 15 interviews in the can that I never even posted. I just literally burn out. I wrote and produced an hour long audio drama. It took me 8 or 9 months, and when I got done with that, I was done.
Right.
So I'll make an appearance when somebody has something like you asked me for this one. But I don't have it in me anymore to. And of course, I have stuff at home that I have to take care of also now that I didn't have before.
Right.
Not asking for pity, or my wife has cancer, so so I have to take care of her sometimes.
Sure.
And I still have to work a 40-hour, week, and so I just burn out.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun, and I've been on with you several times, different topics, for Batman and $6 Million Man, and I can't do that. I'm too old for this.
Well, that's me though. It's like I either got to get it done or I got to give it up myself. So far it's working out. Episode 6 started at the beginning of the year, and it's every Sunday. And in fact, folks, let me tell you, we'll be back next Sunday taking a look at Star Trek Discovery. Clay, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. I had a great time. Next time you have something, give me an invite. If I'm good, if I'm free, I'll be there.
Well, you know where we've got the invites going from. That's how you got onto this one here. Yep. So until next time, folks, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. See you next Sunday when we're talking Star Trek Discovery.